The Coonhound Collective podcast is brought to you by CZ Welding and Custom Dog Boxes. Dog boxes built by hunters for hunters. Check these guys out today. This is your host, Jason Snellgrove, and I will be your guide as we journey down the road to pleasure hunt or hitting the long trail to those great comp hunts. This is the Coonhound Collective podcast. Welcome to the Coonhound Collective podcast today. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Chris Harley, who owns the Big Lee dog that just put on a clinic at the Grand American. And we're going to talk about Big Lee, but we're going to talk about some of Chris's background first. Chris, how's it going today?
Hey, how you doing today, sir? I'm doing well.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us today on the podcast and share some of your stories. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, where you grew up, that type of thing.
Yeah, that'd be great. My name is Chris Harley. I'm from a small town called Orangeburg, South Carolina. I currently live in a little small town called Cameron, South Carolina. I'm 37 years old. I've been coon hunting probably since I was about 12, probably younger, but most of my memories are started, I guess, remembering hunts around 12. I have a wife and a 5-year-old son, and my daughter will be 2 in just a few days. And I've been coon hunting for a long time.
Well, you definitely got your hands full there with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I'm sure your wife is pretty busy, and you as well, for sure.
Yes, sir.
So tell us, how'd you get into messing with coonhounds, if it was coonhounds or hunting dogs in general?
Well, I've had hunting dogs my entire life. Down here in South Carolina, you know, we can run deer with dogs, and I've been involved in around deer dogs or rabbit dogs or squirrel dogs and coon dogs pretty much my entire life. My granddad would always tell us stories about his bird dogs, and so, some kind of way in my entire life I've been associated with some sort of hunting dog.
So I'm from Alabama originally, the southeast side of Alabama. We can run deer with dogs there as well, and that's where a lot of people get involved with dogs in that area. And later, as time progresses, later on in life, they end up, going over to coon dogs or squirrel dogs or like you said, beagles. Is that kind of what gave you the passion that you wanted to always have a hound of some sort around?
That's exactly right. It was just always that's what we did. We would go hunt dogs on deer with dogs on Saturdays or Saturday mornings. I mean, even back then it was a huge deal. I mean, people would get together on Thanksgiving or Christmas or the day after Thanksgiving and run a lot of farmland and have a lot of farmland. So we were always somewhere, especially during the holidays, with our family, having hunts with dogs. So it's just always been a special place for me.
So, what was your first dog that you had that was yours that was a coonhound?
The first dog that I specifically remember buying myself, I was 15 years old, and I worked after school at the local feed store, the dog food center, and I saved my money there after school, and I worked all summer. That was my first, I say, real job. And I saved my money, and I bought a walker dog from a local guy. She was about 8 years old when I bought her at the time, and her name was Rose. She was a tree and walker, and she wasn't flashy, she wasn't fast, but she was accurate. And I'll tell you a funny story real quick about her. She she ended up losing one of her back legs. I had to have one of her back legs amputated. And back then, we would get together, high school 15, 16-year-old friends, and we would get together and go coon hunting. And everybody always picked on me and told me they called her Tripod Rose because she had 3 legs. But she she would always impress everybody because we would hunt with some other dogs, but she would be the one in there with a coon. Like I said, she wasn't flashy or anything spectacular, but she was the first dog I ever bought. And I still have some pictures in my parents' house of me with the old tripod Rose. So she's my first one.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And for dogs to, I've heard some other stories of some dogs that were had three legs that still go out and perform and tree coons. That's pretty good for sure. So did you just pleasure hunt her, or did you comp hunt her any at all?
Well, back then, in South Carolina, the State Coon Hunters Association puts on a big youth hunt series, and they have been for forever, as long as I can remember. And we would go around to those youth series. Dad would take us around to those youth series, and my brother would hunt a friend of ours' dog, or I'd hunt a friend of ours' dog. But I mean, pretty much all she ever competed in was local state association youth hunts.
Okay, so after Rose there, what dog did you get next? Did you get something else local there, or did you have something out of her, or how did that go?
Well, I guess that's kind of what got me into English dogs. I went out, and my dad had a friend of his going to buy a litter of pups, or a few pups from Irvin Commodore down on Wadmalaw Island, the Stono River line of dogs. And I rode with them. Dad and I rode with them, and I bought my first English pup. And that's kind of how I got into English dogs. And then I met some local hunters who hunted English dogs, and Greg Covington, and he had top-notch dogs. His dog at the time was the 1992 ACHA, I believe it was, World Champion English, Covington's Royal Air. And he had sired they bred a female out of him to a Walker dog, and that produced at that time it was single registered, but he was a crossbred dog, and his name was Hardwood Lightning. And he's probably the dog out of my childhood that stands out the most. He was the first competition hunt I ever went to, UKC hunt. My cousin and I rode with Greg in a single cab truck, and we took Lightning, and it was my first competition hunt I'd ever been in, or two as a spectator, and it was Lightning's first competition hunt, and Lightning blew him out of the water. I remember we scored first place in the hunt, high scoring dog. Back then, UKC, it was points. You had to, if you were chasing night champion title, you had to beat any other dog at the cast to get that win. And so it was about scoring points as well. And so also back then, 20, I can remember the Barnwell Club had 20 or 30 people in there that night. It was a huge crowd. And so that really stood out to me. And that's kind of how I got into English dogs. And Jason Fogle, he was also part of that training and with the Hardwood Lightning. And that's kind of how I got into those English dogs.
So you went there to your first UKC hunt, and when you were there spectating on that cast, did you know then this is something I want to do? I really enjoy this, or was this something that come along later?
Well, no, we had been around coon hunting and coon hunted, like I said, the U series, but at that time, that was probably a standout moment for me, witnessing a dog that was just at a whole nother level than, my Rose dog or any other dogs I'd been in the woods with, local pleasure dogs. I mean, he was just a different caliber. He actually went on to win the Grand American in 2002, and Big Lee's ancestors on his bottom side actually go back to Royal Air and Lightning. Yep.
Okay. So you got that English pup, and I'm assuming you got that pup up and going, or did you end up buying another dog, start a dog, or how did it go from there?
I did. I got her. I think I kept her till she was 2 or 3 years old. She would run a deer. She would run a coon. She would tree a possum. I didn't have a shocking collar back then, so we were old school trying to break them from running off game. And I ended up selling her. From there, I kind of got it older in high school and sports. And after I sold her, Rose ended up passing. And I went on to college. And after I got out of college, I went. My career took me in a path where I had to do a lot of traveling. So I went several years without coon hunting through my college years and in the earlier part of my career. And I'd say probably around 2016 or so is when I bought another dog, a
Okay.
coon dog.
So you sold that dog, and your other dog passed away. And you went that time because I kind of did this kind of same story. I went a season there where I was working and traveling. I didn't have a hound. Um, what was those years like? Was you wanting to get back into it? I mean, for me, it was always the fall. Whenever you feel that first cool morning or first cool evening, you go out the door or whatever, and it's kind of cool at night, and all those memories of coon hunting with those first hounds that I had would come back, and that would really excite me and want me to get another dog. I just wasn't in a position where I could.
Well, sometime around when Rose passed and I sold that young dog, we got into deer dogs pretty hard. And through college, I had a partner. I was off at college, and he still lived back at home. He and I actually on deer dogs together, and we had a pretty strong pack of deer dogs. So that's where I spent most of my Saturday mornings and those cool winter days. But
Yeah. Okay. So you had deer dogs through college. So what was the events that led up to the point of I want to get another dog to coon hunt at night?
so my job took me on I tell people I lived in 10 states in 10 years with a traveling industrial construction engineering company. I was in Montana at the time, and I had an opportunity to come back to Charleston and work. And when I did that, I moved back to my hometown of Orangeburg, and I commuted to Charleston. And when I got back home, that was the first time I had been back home in a couple years from traveling all over the United States. So when I got back home, I made it a point. I said I want to get another coon dog. So I was doing a lot of commuting back and forth to Charleston and living back at home, and that's when I got back into coon hunting.
Okay. So what was that first dog that you got when you got back into it?
Oh man, I bought some pups. I went through old dogs. I bought some started dogs. I never bought anything really special that stood out to me. I ended up having to go travel back to Kentucky, and I actually took my dogs with me to Kentucky. I had a rental house on a farm up there, and I lived in Kentucky for 2 years, and I met a lot of good people up there, and I hunted a lot of dogs, and I bought and sold dogs and bought and sold puppies. I never could find anything that really made me happy. I did have a nice true coon dog, a Walker dog that went back to Bone Collector. Her name was Bella. I actually kept her until she passed. But as far as finding something that I was really I was wanting to push something. I wanted to get back into the competition hunting pretty hard, and I wanted to be at the top, and I just never could really find anything that suited me. I went through a lot of pups and a lot of dogs for probably about, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. I did this. I told myself that when I was a kid, I didn't have any money, and I did. When I got back into it, I had a decent job, a pretty good job, and I wanted to set my standards higher and set my expectations higher, and but it took a while. It took a couple of years, until I came across Lee.
Okay. So how old was Lee whenever you got him?
Lee was 15 or 16 months old. I think he was 16 months old when I bought him. He was a very nice young starter dog. He was a natural born, a natural starting dog. He had a good start out with Alan Short and those guys down in Georgia, and I was on the phone with him one day, and he started telling me about his pedigree, and I recognized some dogs on the bottom side of his pedigree, and I put it together after tracing dogs that he went back to those dogs I mentioned earlier, Royal Air and Lightning, and he had just sold him at the time, and I made it a point that I was going to try to buy him if he ever came available. And the guy he was sold to was Randall Powell, and Randall Powell was hunting Lee's brother, Crackerjack. So lo and behold, after a month or so of Randall owning him, he decided to sell Lee, and I was the first one he called. And I went straight to the bank that afternoon, and I got the money sent to Randall, and Lee showed up at my house a week later. So it was a lot, had to do with, everything I'd heard about him and the people that had been involved with him, and, his pedigree on the bottom side that really, really took me to him. To have the opportunity, I thought that lineage of dogs had died out, and to have that opportunity to get back involved with dogs that I hunted with when I was 12, 13 years old, I felt like I had to take advantage of it. So I took a risk. I bought him sight unseen, and it paid off.
Yeah, I would say so. And that whenever you're looking for a dog, I know when I got back into it, my first dog I bought was a black and tan, as I've probably shared on this podcast before. And whenever I was looking, I was kind of the same deal you were. I was looking for lineages back in pedigrees, and I found this young, or actually a pup, out of Arkansas, and bought him, and he was living up to everything that I wanted it to be, and he got sick and ended up passing away, and through that, I got some other dogs that kind of tied back into that, and it don't always work out like you think it's going to work out, and to where I'm at today, that I'm actually hunting an English dog today, because it just kind of suits what I was looking for better. So you rolled the dice there, you took a gamble, you got Lee home. How long was it before you put him in the woods?
So Lee showed up at my house in February of 2019, and I hunted him. I hunted him that whole. To me, like you said, from fall, spring, winter, fall and winter and spring time frame is kind of how I look at hunting season down here in the South. But I hunted him for probably 3 months, and he won his first PKC cast in April. We put him in a $30 hunt, and he won his first cast, and we played around a little bit, but nothing major. And in May of 2019, I took Lee up to a good friend of mine, Jerry Hicks, in Kentucky. I spoke previously about that I lived in Kentucky for 2 years, and he was a good friend of mine, and he's a hard hunter. He likes to hunt by himself, and I sent him up to him for the summer, and Mr. Jerry hunted him all summer for me to kind of keep him tuned up. And when I got him back, I'd say August or September of that year, maybe August, I got him back, and we worked on a lot of things with him. I started getting him really ready for and tuned up for competition, recutting and things that, just competition tuning. He was still, a 2-year-old dog, or had just turned 2. He turned 2 in July. But, and I made it a point, I wanted to start testing the waters and seeing what he could actually win. So around October, I started going to some local UKC hunts and PKC hunts, $30 hunts. And we did pretty good in October and November of 19. And then, which is the start, the fourth quarter is the start of would have been the start of the 2020 PKC year. So I wanted to start running some of the PKC races. So we had won a couple $30 casts early October, November timeframe, which was in 2019, but it went towards 2020. And then in December, I got in my first Final Four with him at the Palmetto State Jamboree in Union, and that was a really awesome feeling. You know, it was the first big win for me. It was an open event, but it was the first big win for me. And you know, I started realizing that we were stacking up points early already for the state race and the breed race. So going into early 2020, we started hitting a lot of other PKC hunts around the area, the Shriners Benefit hunt, and you know, we went to the Grand American, but I won my cast that year in 2020 in the Grand American, but it was Saturday night with 175 plus. I didn't have enough to get in the top 20. But we went on in February and March hunting PKC hunts real hard. Every $30 hunt I was at. And then in early March at the Low Country Jamboree, we made another Final Four appearance, and we ended up winning the entire hunt. And that was another phenomenal feeling, another awesome Final Four for me. And so that led into, you know, springtime and the summertime, and I sent Lee up to another guy I knew in Kentucky, Dylan, and he continued to hunt Lee and open events for me throughout the summer. And lo and behold, we finished that year in the PKC race, the #1 English breed leader and #2 in the state of South Carolina in PKC. So those were major accomplishments for me. You know, I realized that, you know, we really had a chance to do some winning with this dog.
So, but before we go on, because there's a whole lot more winning that Lee's done that I want you to talk about, Nationals, Grand American, etc. Kind of tell me what you seen in Lee at this time that you knew you had something special, kind of how he operated as a young dog, and what you was really liking about him. Hey guys, this is Jason over at the Coonhound Collective podcast. Is your dog box starting to get wore? Maybe it's starting to get a little cracked like mine is. Maybe you've just been thinking about it's time to upgrade to a new box, but you've asked your buddies and you're just not real sure what direction to go in. Well, let me help you out here. Go check my friends out at CZ Welding and Fabrication, custom dog boxes and aluminum products on Facebook. You can check out all their custom work they do there and their designs that they do. If you don't see something that you don't exactly like there, reach out to Nathan at 540-810-5439, 540-810-5439, or send him a message through the Facebook page. I bet he can fix you up. Don't wait till fall to get that new dog box. Go ahead, get that dog box now. Get you something looking good in the back of your truck that you can be proud of and that you can haul your dog around in comfort. Check my friends out at CZ Welding and Fabrication. You won't go wrong. Dog boxes built by hunters for hunters. Get yours today. CZ Welding and Fabrication.
Well, a lot of people look for different stuff in a dog, and you know, to me, it's about consistency and accuracy. I mean, he's got to be able to tree coons, and he's got to be able to show me coons. If I go in there and walk across the swamp for a mile and I get this slick tree, I'm probably not going to keep that dog long. So I'll walk 2 miles to a dog if I have to, but you need to have the coon. And Lee has an ability to just, I mean, he can tree coons on a tough night, he can run a track, he can tree a hot coon, he's fast, he's real big, but he's very athletic. He moves through the woods like lightning. I mean, he can fly around, and he's just very accurate, and he's consistent. I mean, he gives me his whole 110% heart every time I turn him loose. And, that's just a dog's got to have heart. And Lee was very consistent. And again, he could tree layups on nights when they weren't moving, and he could also tree with the hot one. So he just had what I look for in a dog.
Yeah. So we get to the end of the PKC year 2020. You've won the English breed, second in the state at South Carolina. What's next for Lee?
So that led into, it put me in a situation. I think I'd also had enough UKC cast wins for Tournament of Champions. I may be in a year later with that. I can't remember exactly, but so then that puts you in a position to where you in the top 16 of the state. So you have the state hunt, same thing for the breed hunt, and we earned a truck ticket. So in the actual start of the fiscal year of 2021, we had a pile of hunts. We started out in the first of the year with the Grand American. I hunted Lee in a warm-up hunt that Tuesday night before the Grand American, and Wednesday I go out to his kennel, and he's standing on three legs, and he can't put weight on his front right paw. And I called my wife. I was at work. This was Wednesday when I got home, and she took him to the vet Thursday, and he had jammed his toe, and he couldn't put any weight on it. And the vet told me to go ahead and hunt him Friday night at the Grand American. But I chose to not hunt him at all Friday night at the Grand American. And I turned around Saturday night, and he scored 1,025 points and was overall high-scoring dog, first place Saturday night. But it didn't, you have to be a double cast winner at the Grand American to get in. So I received a lot of headaches, a lot of crap from a lot of guys about not even hunting Friday night. But it wasn't worth it to me to make that injury any worse on him. So leading into January, we had a lot of hunts. My daughter was born in January of 2021, so that was a big event for me. Going into February of 2021, we hit a lot of big pro classics, and we hadn't really gotten into pro classics yet. We were still doing a lot of open events, and we qualified for the World Hunt in the UKC. And then we ended up going, the English hunt and the state hunt was all of that stuff piled on top of you. We went to Batesville, Mississippi for the truck hunt that year. And I can remember Dad and I leaving, and we drove all the way to Batesville, and I ended up having to withdraw, and I called him up, and we got back in the car, the Tahoe, and we drove all the way back home. We were on the road about 28 hours, and we never stayed at a hotel after I went through that night. We just drove straight home. The English hunt was in West Tennessee, which was 9 hours, and pretty much not the same thing happened. But when we lost our cast, and we turned around and drove back home. So we put miles after miles those first 3 years in 2021 on a car, and it was just it kind of wore me out a lot. But he had earned the right to be there, so I wanted to make sure that he was there. And then that leads us into the Nationals in 2021. We went to PKC Nationals in 2021, and we doubled up on Tuesday night. I believe I was up there by myself during this time frame. Yeah, this was the one I was at by myself. And we doubled up on Tuesday night, so we kind of sat around for a while and waited, because you don't hunt in the semifinals or quarterfinals until I think that Saturday night. And so we got in the semifinals Saturday night, and Lee had treed 5 coons that night. A lot were in timeout, but two were in timeout. But that was the absolute worst thunderstorm I had ever been in, and we had ever hunted in. And I still have guys that were there at the Nationals that particular night, and it was unreal, the thunderstorm, and at the end of waiting all week from Tuesday to Saturday, I lost that round. But when I left there, I was proud of my dog. He had competed at early round, one early, one late, and he had treed 5 coons in the worst storm I'd ever hunted in. And the storm didn't last long, but as it passed through, some dogs quit hunting and whatnot. But he stayed at it. But we ended up losing the cast because a lot of those coons he treed were in timeout. But I was still proud of him.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like he was looking good for sure. So where'd you finish placing at the Nationals?
That year at the Nationals, I was in the semifinal, the quarterfinals. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and that's I've never hunted that, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and they said that's probably one of the toughest hunts to win, and much less, try to get into any of the final rounds there.
Yes, it is. You're really competing against other platinum champions. Well, he's not gold champions or dogs that have platinum champions, gold champions, silver champions, dogs that have won all year long and earned the right to be there at the Nationals. And it's definitely a tough hunt. Any of those hunts, the World, the Nationals are tough, but September, the Nationals are pretty tough for us in March.
Yeah. So you come back home, I guess, from the Nationals. Did you hunt in any of the World hunts with him, or how did that go?
Well, I guess if I back up a second to 2020, in October of 2020, we went to the World hunt, Dylan and I, and he lost the first 2 days, and on Wednesday of the World hunt, he won his cast early and late, and I drove up on that Friday to the World hunt, and we won our cast early, and we lost late, and so we made it to the top 26 out of, I remember Jerry Mole posting, making some posts about the record-breaking crowd that they had, but it was, my notes say 1,596 dogs, and we were in the top 26 of the PKC World that year. So that was just a major accomplishment. And then you bounce back forward to 2021, where we got into the semifinals at our next big, huge PKC hunt. And, it was just an awesome team.
Yeah, for sure. And I do remember posts being on Facebook about the record breaking number of dogs that was at the World Hunt that year, and to finish anywhere in the top there, that's an accomplishment to beat out that many dogs, because that's a tough feat to do, because there's some good dogs that show up there.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, so we're finished with the Nationals. Did you hunt in the UKC World at all, or the TOC or any of that stuff?
I didn't. So also, leading into 2021, we had qualified for a lot of hunts, the Tournament of Champions and the Nationals and the World, and they all, when you're running them all together, I just talked about, let me get my notes straight here. So we come out of the National Championship in 2021, and I was coming home from Salem, Illinois, and I passed Lee off to Shane Wheat, and he took Lee to the Tournament of Champions, which was just the very next weekend, one of the regionals. And I think they went to the regional in Arkansas, and we lost there. The next weekend you had the Super Stakes. So we went from Nationals to the Tournament of Champions, back to Princeton, Indiana, to the Super Stakes. And he ended up winning one early cast that year at the Super Stakes. And then, from there, Shane hunted him in some hunts throughout the summer. We started getting into a few pro classics, but, we didn't do, excellent that year throughout that summer. And I just feel like a lot of what I mentioned and I've talked about the earlier part of 2021, all the hunts and all the traveling and all the road work we had done early that year was just starting to catch up with us all, I think. Lee had kind of gotten to the point where he didn't like to be around a lot of other dogs, and he would actually leave a tree if other dogs piled in there on him, or what he would do is he'd actually try to get deep and get out of hearing. You just kind of get away from other dogs, very independent. And I put him in some pro classics in 2022, jumping ahead a little bit. In 2022, I put him in some pro classics and stuff, and it pretty much, if I lost a hunt, it was because he was out of pocket deep somewhere. I'd find him, he'd be tree with a coon, but he liked to get away. So anyway, backing up to 2021, that summer, we had a long summer. Shane put him in some hunts. We didn't finish to where we wanted to finish, and I got him back. That fall. I made a road trip out to Tennessee and picked him up and brought him home that fall of 2021.
Yeah. So you got several different people, handling him here, handling him there, and not only could that be rough on y'all as far as the traveling and hitting these hunts and back and forth and stuff like that, but that's got to be an adjustment for the dog too. I mean, we all wish they could talk to us and we could talk back to them. They'd understand us. We just tell them what we want them to do and they go do it. But that's got to be an adjustment for that dog too, to adjust between each handler, because I'm sure you handle different than some of your other buddies that handle him do, and so that's got to be some type of adjustment for him too.
It is absolutely. It's the reality is I work a full-time job. I have a full-time family, and I wanted to try to make a point to have the dog to get him all the exposure he needed to be able to win all the a lot of these hunts, and that's just what I ended up having to do to make that happen. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's an adjustment for me and the other handler. It's tough on your wallet, tough on the dog.
Yeah, for sure. And gas prices probably didn't help that cause any either. That definitely put a damper, I think, on some traveling for some people, for sure. So you get into you finish 2021. And I guess you start the year off in 2022 with the Grand American again. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
Okay, so how how did that go?
So another thing I wanted to mention is back during this time, a young dog starts doing a lot of winning, and people want to breed. They see, hey, we'd like to have a pup out your dog. And at that time, I wasn't willing to let him do live coverage. So another thing we were both reaching out into was the AI world of artificial insemination with breeding. I wanted to start getting some pups on the ground out of him, but I wanted to keep pushing him. So that was another contributing factor, I think. We would take him somewhere and have him collected, or he would be around a lot of females in heat, and even though we were doing the AI at Vet's office and whatnot, it was I still think that played a part in it during that time frame. But yeah, leading it to the end of 2021 and starting 2022, we had a couple litters of pups on the ground. The end of 2021, we did real good in the local $500 Pro Classic. We put some money on the board right there at the end of 2021. And I went into 2022, and on Friday night, again, in the Grand American, we lost. We had a dead cast. We treated a coon, but we treed some den trees, and then we made a mistake, and we couldn't recover and ended up having a dead cast. I turned around Saturday night, and we placed fourth place overall with 825 plus. So I started 2022 out in a good on a good foot and a good note. So leading into a couple other big pro classic hunts, I'm probably entering one of the biggest hunts I've ever entered in my life as far as entry fees. And man, he treated coon every single night. It was the worst conditions around here I've hunted in. It was sleeting. It was almost snowing. It was in the low 20-degree weather. He still managed every night. It was a 3-night hunt. Every single night I handled him. Every night I put my leash on him, he was under a coon. I lost the first night on a tiebreaker, that hunt. And the next night, I'll tell you, this is a funny story. We drove down this long dirt road, and I heard the dog in front of me bark in the dog box as we went through the swamp, and we must have drove another mile. And we turned loose, and Lee went back there and treed that coon. He stayed out of pocket the entire hunt, and I was just hoping and praying that the wind would blow my direction so I could get a drift of him and hear him, because I knew he was down there treed with that coon. And but it never did. So that I waited the whole hunt, and I finally went through and went and got him. And then the third night, we had a bad night that night. It was just a bad night that third Saturday night, and I kind of took a break from it after that. I started focusing on hunting, doing a lot of pleasure hunting the remainder of that winter with Lee and his pups. And I did some more breeding, and at this point I got some pups of Lee's that are around about 9 months old, 10 months old. And my cousin and I, we own a little female called Hissy Set together, and we started hunting her a lot with Lee, and I was going with some other guys with some puppies out of Lee. So I spent the entire rest of 2022 pretty much just pleasure hunting and hunting his pups.
Are you tired of whipping, scolding, and shocking to make them get alone? Is your buddy tired of helping you set your dog up for correction night after night? Do you really want your dog to be alone because you forced him to be? Or would you rather him be alone because he wants to be? Grand Night Champion Small Town Lone Survivor is the product of over 25 years of strong natural-born independent traits. This bold trait has been passed down from generation to generation and is showing up in loner offspring today. Loner is a direct son of Hall of Fame Grand Night Champion Cabin Creek Rowdy and Grand Night Champion Lonesome Dove Lori. Loner has a booming mouth that is talked about in every cast he has been in, including the 2021 World Hunt Finals. Loner is a no-reverse, ball-mouth open trailer who ends it plussed up with a huge dying locate and steady chop. Loner loves getting split and is a stay-put gun-pressure tree dog. Loner's intelligence is also impressive. He knows over 12 voice and hand signal commands. Loner has a character that loves like Jesus, but he doesn't walk on water. If you're interested in breeding to Loner, contact Brett Stevens at Small Town English Kennels at 417-300-3777 or find him on Facebook.
If you're interested in running a stud ad for your dog here on the Coonhound Collective podcast, reach out to us at thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. Send us a message through Facebook or Instagram, and we'll be glad to get with you to get you an ad built and get you pricing on all of our ads. So, what are you seeing out of those pups? And we'll get back to Lee here in just a second, because we definitely want to talk about the rest of 2022 and what's already happened here as 2023 is just getting underway. But what are you seeing out of those pups? Are you seeing some of the same stuff that you've seen in Lee as a young dog, or how are they coming along?
So right now, to date, at this very moment, Lee has, that I know of, that are living that I know of, 50 pups. I know of he has 50 pups on the ground. And I would say that in the next couple months, probably 3 of those pups should title. And I haven't hunted with all of them. Obviously, I've hunted and heard from what, we started our own Facebook group, Big Lee Stock, and that group is growing, and it's a place where people can post updates on their Big Lee pups, and we can promote the pups. But it looks like he's really putting the accuracy in his pups. Hissy Fit's very accurate. There's another local dog, Josh Wall owns Ruby. She's a very accurate little dog, and they seem to be starting pretty good, pretty early. Some of them have some things they need to work out. I talked with a guy at Grand American this past weekend, and he said if his would stay treed, she'd have it all. And I told him, I said, she's still real young, just give her a little more time. But every one of them's got a little something going on right now. They're all real young, but they seem to be very accurate and have a lot of drive.
Yeah, sounds like to me you definitely, with a limited number of pups on the ground, sounds like to me that you definitely are getting some good reports out of the pups. And I did want to take a moment here to put this information out there. Clayton Stark Outdoors on YouTube, sat down with you and interviewed you and him and one of the handlers, and I apologize because I don't remember who it was that he took Big Lee. So if you want to see Big Lee go, here's mouth, stuff like that. Clayton has a great video up over there on his YouTube channel, Clayton Stark Outdoors.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to pick back up on the on the spring and the summer of 2022, we got Lee up in the hands of a friend of mine, Eric Emery, and he's the handler that you were discussing earlier on Clayton Stark's video. And Eric is a younger boy. He's been in the coon hunting game for a while, and he's actually been involved and surrounded by a lot of big winners and a lot of big name guys. And Eric's he's an awesome guy. I sent him up there with the intentions of getting several females bred up in northern Indiana, and Eric didn't get a chance to hunt him a whole lot, and we knew that before we made the deal to take him up there. He works with a company that puts in a lot of time throughout the summer, so he doesn't get to hunt a whole lot during the summertime. But we got a couple females bred up there, and we actually got that interview with Clayton Stark, and that was awesome. So to get that video out there for everybody, and his story, Eric's story, and my story, it's just it feels like it's just an awesome feeling to be able to get all that out there for everybody.
Yeah, and that happened right around autumn oaks time. Is that right?
It was from the spring through the summer until autumn oaks, and then I went up there to autumn oaks, and I picked him up and I brought him home.
Okay,
so it was from May to September.
Okay, so did you hunt him in autumn oaks, or did you just pick him up and bring him home?
I hadn't hunted with him, in several months. But I said, while I'm here, I'm gonna sign him up. And Eric had been hunting him once or twice a weekend, and I said, well, we'll see what we can do. I ended up having to withdraw him, and I called him out on the little highway out, little small town road out there in Indiana, and so we didn't do any good in the hunt. But I didn't have a lot of big expectations, but we did give it a whirl.
Yeah. So what happens after autumn oaks? Did you hunt anything between autumn oaks and now?
So autumn oaks until December of 22, I did not put him in any hunts. I just pleasure hunted him and got him back in shape, good hunting shape. And we spent a lot of nights in the woods. And I could tell, I don't know, it's just he just seemed to have been a lot of very relaxed last couple months. I think I started hunting a lot of pups with him too back in September, October, when I got back hunting. Pups would come in and jump on him and jump around him and play with him and play on him. And he just seemed to not mind it, or, he didn't never really make a lot of mistakes. He's never really made a lot of mistakes, but he was treeing closer and getting treed and staying treed, and so we enter a pro classic at our local club in December, and we won early and we got in the final four, and he got out of pocket on that one, and I took fourth place in that hunt. He got out of there, got out of hearing. So, but we got a win late 2022, and I continued to hunt him the rest of the month, and then that led into our Grand American win this past weekend.
Yeah, and we want to talk about that, but it sounds like to me, you got him back, and it really sounds like to me the dog just, knew he was back with you and just kind of relaxed and was comfortable, and sounded like he was kind of hitting a groove there, as far as pleasure hunting and putting up with puppies, because they can be aggravating to an older dog for sure, jumping all over them, and then you get into the Pro Classic. Now here we are. We're about I think a week or 5 days, whatever it is, 6 days out from the Grand American. So how was you feeling Friday? Or I guess, did you hunt any of the warm up hunts going up into the Grand American, or did you just hunt Friday and Saturday night?
So the Grand American doesn't do any UKC warm up hunts like at some of these other larger UKC events. But what we do have is every year we have a PKC hunt in St. George called the New Year's Jamboree, and we have run those local warm-up hunts for that hunt. And so, I didn't hunt any of the warm-ups. 2 years ago is when he hurt his toe when I was hunting in the warm-up hunt. So I made a decision this year and last year. I didn't hunt any of the warm-up hunts. I just let him rest, and I took him pleasure hunting, I think, Tuesday night. So.
Okay. So Friday night you get to the fairgrounds, you get drawed out, and tell us about that cast, if you remember who you drawed and kind of how things went down there.
So Friday night, we drew. Oh man, it was I don't think there was a walker dog in the cast Friday night. They're all running together now, but we met back at my club and we got it out, and we ended up treeing 5 coons. He treed 6 coons Friday night, and man, it was just an awesome feeling. I'm trying to reflect on who all was in my cast on which night, but running together a little bit.
Yeah, well, you've had a long weekend, that's for sure.
Yes, sir. But no, we were able to get under coons and the other dogs. Grant and some of those other guys were in the cast. We got under a coon, and then other dogs had treed circle trees and whatnot. And he was just operating, man. Sorry, I was just drawing a little blank there. It's a lot of casts right there together. But he was just operating. We treated 6 coons Friday night and scored on 6 coons Friday night. And then Saturday night, we scored on 3 coons, and he actually treed 1 in timeout. So he treed 4 Saturday night, and then he treed 1 in the late round on, in the final 4. So that was 11, and one of the trees had 2 in it. So he was under, he's under 11 scoreable trees, 11 trees, and he had a coon in every one of them. One of the hunts on Saturday night, first drop, he treed in a big dead tree right off the rip, and it didn't have a coon in it. And I could tell it was like one of those old hurricane trees where it was dead, but it still had the big limbs on it, and it was broke off at the top. I couldn't prove it had a hole in it from the ground, but I knew it had to be broke off at the top with a coon in it, or at least that's always my expectation with Lee. But anyway, I minus this tree, which was rightfully so. I couldn't prove any hole or anything. So we started I'm jumping into Saturday night. We started off out in the hole, like 175 right there off the rip. and the other dogs got treed, but they treed den trees, and they made a couple mistakes and got minus on a couple things. So the next drop Saturday night, it was almost unreal. It was bam, bam. He treed 2 coons. I mean, he treed a coon so fast. He was treed within a minute before the minute was up. And the other dog, it was 2 coons there, and the other dog had taken the track on, and he treed that one that went up. And we got those points, and we recut him, and he went about 400 yards, and he treed another one. So when the other dog got treed, he had treed in a den tree. So we went from being in the hole, we were back on top just that fast. And the next chop produced a coon, and we ended up winning Saturday night with 450 plus. So it was an awesome hunt Saturday night.
Okay, so I'm on back up here just a minute. You're judging the cast, is that right, on Saturday night?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And you minused your dog on the first tree because you couldn't prove that it was a legitimate den tree.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The reason why I wanted to point that out is, you see a big score come in like that, and there's been some posts on social media, and there's been some people that I've seen make comments that went to bat for you and saying Chris wouldn't do that. He's a straight up guy. I want people to hear that you were judging the cast and you minused your own dog. So you're right from the jump, you're pretty much putting yourself out if Lee don't turn around and perform later in that cast, which he did. And I just want people to understand that don't just jump to conclusions when you hear big scores. You need to hear the stories, straight from the people that were there. And, hey, my hat's off to you. You could argue the point that, hey, I know that tree's hollow. There's a, tops broke out of it, and, there's a hole there, but you done the right thing. You couldn't prove it. So you minused your dog, you took your lick, and you went on, and your dog performed for you, and you won the cast.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So you, let's see, I ain't been to the Grand American since like 1996 or 97. So it's been a long time. You win Saturday night early, and then you have to hunt a Final Four late. Is that right?
Well, they take the combined double cast scores, and they go out and hunt the Final Four. So what happens is you got to wing a cast Friday night and Saturday night. So like we talked about Saturday night, I mean, I got to win Saturday night to even have a chance of making the Final Four. And the first coon he treed, was minus. So it was a oh boy moment. But yeah, back to the setup of the hunt. They take the combined scores from both nights, and the top 4 go back out and hunt in the late round Saturday night.
Okay, so it's Saturday night, early Sunday morning. What dogs did you draw there?
So my win Saturday night put me at a combined score of 17-25, I think it was. And, I was definitely, I was pretty confident that I had enough to get in the Final Four, but you never know. You never know who's going to walk in there with, a big score from Saturday night, and they had scored a big score Friday night too. So you really never know until they call your name out at a hunt office. So we got in the Final Four, and we drew another local guy, Robert Crosby. He got his female in the Final Four as well, and another guy. Everybody was fairly local to the state. I guess they were in the state, yeah. And so we drew out, and it just, I don't know, it was a very fast hour. It was, everything seemed to happen very fast. We'd been hunting 2-hour hunts and 2-hour casts all weekend, and we had that 1 hour. And so on the Final Four, we turned loose, and I took third strike. We turned loose on this branch that went and teed into a big swamp. And they got down that branch and got almost out of here real quick. So we had to haul butt through the woods and get it out on a hill in a hayfield. And as soon as we stopped to where we could listen, they were about 800 yards from us, and they were where that branch teed into that big swamp. And you could just, I mean, you could hear a roar of dogs. I mean, it sounded like all four of them were just blowing the top out of the tree. And I took a third tree on that one. I knew he was there, but I didn't want to tree in first. I was hesitant on whether or not he would stay or keep going. I knew that they had hit that swamp, and I was kind of expecting a lot of times they might have hit that water and that coon swam that swamp. And, you know, those dogs pulled up where he went into the water. So I took a third tree. We got in there. So all four dogs were on the part of this tree. We get in there. One's on the ground, and Lee's not there. So I took a minus, and the other dog took a minus, and they ended up having a coon. So they were plussed up, and then they recut. And I could hear Lee in there on the other side of it was a big creek, but it's real hard to cross it. You got to pick and choose the spots where you cross it. So I could hear him on the other side, and I treed him in. We got across there. We got to him, and he had a den tree. It was an oak tree about a foot in diameter. It was broke off about 12 feet up, and a couple little limbs coming up out of the den tree. And I immediately found a dead log on the ground and started beating the tree and pulling vines and blowing my squaller. And lo and behold, the coon come out of the tree, and everybody saw him, and we were plussed up. So that was a huge moment for us, where things just were kind of went our way on that one. It's not every day you pull a coon out of a den. But so we recut him. I got struck back in. He went the opposite way of all the other dogs, and I knew it was probably going to pretty much, unless he could find one close, I knew he was going to start getting out of there looking for a coon. I got struck back in for a quarter. One of the other dogs treed. We went to that tree, and it was minus, and then the hunt run out, and I took off walking, going to get Lee in the opposite direction, and I told the cast I'd meet him back at the truck. And they went and scored those other two dogs that had treed in just before time was out, and they were minus. So I ended up winning the overall hunt. He stayed out of trouble. We had a little bump on that first hit. We took a 50 minus, but he got a coon treed, and he stayed out of trouble the rest of the night. So I actually handled him after the hunt was over. He was treed again with another coon, but that one didn't count. So that was number 12 for the weekend for him. And at that point, he was getting kind of like I am right now. He's getting a little raspy, but he definitely, man, I took a video of me sitting down talking to him right before the sun came up that morning when I was waiting on him to come over and pick me up. And I hadn't posted this video on social media or anything yet, or shown anybody. I don't know. I took it from me and him, I guess, but I was just telling him how proud I was of him. I mean, this dog, he gives 110% every time you cut him. And I mean, he is going to get under a coon. He's going to get under a coon some kind of way, some kind of how. He's going to find a coon.
Well, what an accomplishment. And I know you mentioned in the video with Clayton Stark, this was one of your goals, to win the Grand American. And congratulations to you and Lee on winning it. I know that's a tough weekend for sure. Sounds like you had a few bumps and bruises along the way through the weekend, but in the end, you come out on top, and Lee done what he had to do to get under a coon and help you get there to win for sure.
That's exactly right.
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. What's next on the list? I mean, we're just a few days out from the Grand American at the time of recording this, and this will release here in a couple of weeks. But what's next on the list here for Lee? You got plans for more, pushing him in some more hunts? Or are you going to just put him up and start breeding him and start working some pups that's out of him? What's your plans here?
Well, I have a male at my house. He's 7 months old. He's a pup out of Lee. I'm gonna work with him some. I'd like for my cousin and I to try to get a couple wins on the female that we own out of Lee Hissy Fit, and I hope some of these other pups can catch up some wins this season. And as far as Lee, I have a, PKC came out with this Pro Classic race series for the state championship. And the one that I mentioned that we won back in December, we got fourth in. We have plans this Friday night to go to another qualifier for that state race. So I hope to compete in that state race. And, my big goal for him next and has always been the finishing the platinum champion. He lacks about $2,000 of being a platinum champion, and there's less than 20 platinum champions ever in the history of PKC in the English breed. So, that's one of my goals. I'm contemplating whether I want to go down and go to Winter Classic and Autumn Oaks in the world with UKC this year. I've kind of pushed him a lot in PKC. I'm thinking I might try to hit some of those bigger hunts and maybe take a run at the Triple Crown or, Purina Points race. Maybe mix it up a little bit this year. But I mean, he's not retired. He's going to hunt until I find something to replace him with. And, I sold a couple young dogs out at the Grand American, and, they were asking me this and that about them. And I said, well, my expectations are, I'm not stopping until I get a dog that's better than Lee, and so the expectations are high. He sets the bar high, and that's going to be tough, but we're going to do it eventually.
Yeah, well, you're close there to being platinum champion, and I think y'all get it done here pretty quick. I don't think you'll have any issues there, especially the way he's been operating, and get him a little break this week and get him back out and going Friday. And I guess you're gonna continue to do some breeding with him, but you're gonna just do the AI, no live covering. Are you doing any frozen, shipping any frozen semen on him, or have you had him collected or any of that stuff?
So back when we were doing the AI and stuff, I did have him collected. I have some stored in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'd like to. I want to finish this year out in some hunts before I start breeding him a lot, live breeding him a lot. He has live bred, and it doesn't seem to have affected any of his hunting, and so that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, I have a lot of guys bring females and leave them for 2 or 3 weeks, and so I got a female in heat over there in the kennel next to him, and well, not next to him. I try to keep them as separated as possible, but all that takes a toll on them, and then you're taking them out in the woods and trying to get him to perform in a hunt, and he's got females that he's thinking about. So my plan of attack will probably be a little different this year when it comes to hunting and breeding. But I am going to have him collected again this summer. And hopefully this year and these wins are going to set him up for the next stages of his career, which is, later in his life to hopefully be a big top reproducer.
Yeah, for sure. I got a buddy that he's kind of the AI king to me. He's really taught me a lot. And I'll give him a shout out here, Brett Stevens, that he owns the Loner Dog, and he does a lot of AI. And man, Brett's a great guy, and he's very knowledgeable when it comes to that stuff. And he's really taught me a lot. And as far as AI and breeding dogs and stuff like that, because I'm no dog breeder. I'm barely a good dog hunter, so I just go out there and let the dog do the dog's thing and try to work on the things I can. And sounds like to me you and Lee are headed in the right direction, and we definitely wish you the best for this next year, and maybe we'll bump into you at a hunt somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and touch a second on a couple things. That Friday night at the Grand American, we turned loose on the first drop, and they struck a coon, and they drove them in there, and they come back towards us, and we all four treed in, and we got in there to them, and Lee was just a little, it was in a straight line, and Lee was just a little past them. And we got in there, and 3 of the dogs were minus, and we got to Lee, and he had a coon. So that was the start of Friday night. So I in the back of my mind, I was hoping and praying that it would continue like that the rest of the cast. We went to another drop in a big swamp, and we got in there, and Lee, that was the tree that he put two up one tree, and he did it fairly quickly. And the other dogs, one had a circle, two of them had circles. They were split, and two of them had circles. One of them was in the treetop, and the other one was up in a den tree. And the next drop, we got in there, and all three dogs were treed together, and we got in there, and one of the dogs had come off the tree and was off to the left. So that dog drew another minus, and at that point, that guy withdrew, and that left me and another dog at the time. And so we come out of there, and he ended up backing out. So we came out of there, and we went to three other turnouts with Lee by himself, and he ended up getting coon treat every time. So I just wanted to go back, comment a little bit on that Friday night hunt, him treeing 6 coons. I'd say 3 or 4 of those coons that he treed were layups. The last drop, he was about 800 yards in there by himself before he ever opened, and we went in there and he had the coon. And one other quick thing I wanted to jump back and talk about, we talked about some big hunts. In 2020, in June of 2020, that was the year that COVID, was around and messing up everything. And it was a tough year for everybody that year. But the Super Stakes that year actually was in June. And Lee made it to the semifinals of the Super Stakes that year in Indiana. So that was one big hunt that I failed to mention earlier on his resume from back in 2021.
Yeah, well,
2020.
Yeah,
2020.
Yeah, 2020. The dog's definitely been doing some winning, and sounds like to me that you've put him in the best opportunities that you could possibly put him in to be winning for far as for different handlers, different states, and keeping him tuned up in the summer. And I'm sure being in South Carolina that y'all probably fight the alligators and the water moccasins and stuff such as that in the summertime. So
Absolutely. Oh man.
I can kind of relate from coming from Southeast Alabama.
Yes, sir. That's for sure. It's tough hunt down here in the winter, summertime for real.
Yeah. So I don't know if you got anybody you want to thank or any sponsors or anybody you want to give a shout out to, but we've been at it a little. I've kept you a little bit over an hour now, and man, I really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing your story and Lee's story and kind of where you're at up to today. But I think we're to a place where we can kind of hit a stopping point here. But I definitely want to give you an opportunity to thank anybody you want to thank and any sponsors that you want to shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on the podcast, and I've enjoyed this hour to be able to talk about myself and Lee and our winnings. And do I want to thank anybody? I mean, the list is, where does it even end? Obviously my wife and my 2 children. My wife, she's been with me since the beginning on all this stuff, and she it's a lot of long trips that I go on and a lot of time away, and coon hunting, you go at night, and it's tough, especially with the little ones. And my wife, she's always there for me and supportive. And my family, my dad, he always rides with me. I mentioned that he had went on those road trips with me all that time, and you don't have to pull his leg to get in the truck and ride with you. So I always appreciate that. And my mother and my wife's parents, they always come and help us with the kids if I'm out of town or if I need them to come. My wife works nights, so I have my kids a lot of nights by myself, and sometimes that falls when I have a hunt, and they always come over and help watch the kids, and so I can go help with the hunt or organize the hunt or club meetings or whatever it may need to be. And then, our landowners and our everyone who helps put all these big hunts on and all these kennel registries is so much hard work. And they put in a lot of hours behind the scenes that people just don't even realize, and what it takes to run some of these big hunts. guides, landowners. Every day it gets harder to find good hunting ground, especially where I'm at and other places. You know, we don't have a lot of public land where I'm at, and so we have to hunt a lot of private land. And nowadays, you know, we have the deer hunting leases have tied up a lot of land. So I really appreciate all of my landowners and all of my friends who's helped me along the way, and everybody pushing the leap up out there right now. I hope that we continue to do big things.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any doubt. I don't think we're done hearing Big Lee's name called at the winter circle for sure. It sounds like that y'all started the year off strong here, and I really look to hear your name called several more times throughout this year.
Yes, sir. I sure appreciate that.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the podcast today. If you don't have anything else to add, I think we've kind of covered everything. We're to a good stopping point here, and hopefully somewhere along the way throughout the year, maybe we bump into each other at a hunt somewhere, and I can shake your hand and really thank you for taking the time out of your day to be on the podcast.
Yes, sir. That will be awesome, and I appreciate it very much. And again, thanks to everyone out there who's supporting us and, you know, interested in hunting a leap pup and pushing those pups. And thanks for all you guys do on these podcasts. You know, it's a chance where we can really say our story and save our story and save it in history. And maybe my son and my grandchildren can listen to the story one day. So I really appreciate what you do also.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate that, and that's our goal with this podcast, is to preserve individual history and the history of our sport, which is coon hunting. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, buddy, and we will holler at you soon.
All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys, for listening to the Coonhound Collective podcast today. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen to the podcast. If you don't mind, head over to Facebook and give us a like, and head over to Instagram and give us a follow. It's both at the Coonhound Collective. Also, if you would like to reach us here at the Coonhound Collective, you can reach us at thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. If there's someone that you would like to hear on the podcast or a product that you would like to hear talked about, please send it to thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. Thanks again. Have a great day.